Kamala Harris, you brought this up earlier, will be whatever she has to be in front of whatever audience. I'm a tough prosecutor. I let off BLM guys. I'm tough on the border. I didn't have anything to do with the border. I mean, she'll say what she has to say, and you have Tim Walz again, who will shape shift and claim credit for things to be whomever he wants to be, right? He wants to be tough on crime, so he says he got an A record with the NRA until he wants to say he got an F, right? He wants to say that he served in he was the highest ranking enlisted guy when he never actually achieved that rank. Right? He will do whatever he has to, say whatever he has to. She will say it. I think that might be the way to go. To your point, it just gets them off message. It baits them a little. I think that's it. But the other thing I wanted to get to on this has gone way under the radar. And I want to play this for you because this is Jamie Raskin, as you know, who has been a provocateur of sorts in the House. He's a House Democrat from Maryland. Was interviewed, and he said something that has come up before. It was an undercurrent, right? Which is, hey, even if Trump wins, well, we just don't even have to seat him, right? We'll say that he wasn't, because they're going to claim that, well, the Supreme Court said he could run. We can't kick him off the ballot. Never said we had to seat him. And that's why if we keep the House, we won't do it. Let me see if I can play this clip for you right now and show you what I'm talking about.
What can be put into the Constitution can slip away from you very quickly. And the greatest example going on right now before our very eyes is Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which they're just disappearing with a magic wand, as if it doesn't exist, even though it could not be clearer what it's stating. And so, they want to kick it to Congress. So it's going to be up to us on January 6, 2025, to tell the rampaging Trump mobs that he's disqualified. And then we need bodyguards for everybody in Civil War conditions, all because the 9 justices, not all of them, but these justices who have not many cases to look at every year, not that much work to do, a huge staff, great protection, simply do not want to do their job and interpret what the great 14th Amendment means.
So you get that. They're going to disqualify him. And I think that this is, now, again, this is why I've always maintained that one of the myriad reasons we need to keep the House. But their plan is, we don't care. The party of democracy's dying, but we'll kick him out. We'll disqualify him.
After years that we've heard incessantly till they're blue in the face about the awful perils of January 6th, the worst day in the history of this or any republic. And they promise now to go around and do the exact same thing. And in fact, they promise to do something even more egregious. Because what Jamie Raskin is saying is not if there's a contested election, not if there are competing slates of electors, not if there is a push for some kind of electoral compromise like we saw in 1877. No. Trump wins it fair and square. We, the House, unilaterally, House Dems are going to say, no, he's disqualified because of a provision of the 14th Amendment that Jamie Raskin is misreading, or he's just lying about, that has already been interpreted by the branch of government that is tasked with interpreting the Constitution, namely the court. The court has ruled and said Trump actually is qualified. He can run. No, the Democrats are going to shred it because they're so afraid of Trump. So yes, you can play that back. Now, part of me thinks you play that clip. You got to play that clip for the independent voters. You got to play that clip for the moderate voters. You got to play that clip for suburban voters. Here, Jamie Raskin saying there's going to be civil war conditions. I don't want that going through my suburb. But I don't think we really need to play that clip for Democrats because, we can shout until we're blue in the face that Jamie Raskin is a hypocrite or something. But I don't think he's going to bat an eyelash because for the Democrats, democracy is when they win.
Yes.
And fascism is when they lose. So, when someone like Viktor Orban in Hungary gets elected by a large majority, that's a threat to democracy. When Giorgia Meloni gets elected in Italy by a lot of people, that's a threat to democracy. When the people elect Donald Trump, that's a threat to democracy. So they're just redefining words in the same way that they define undocumented American, in the same way that they redefine the word woman. We're not going to persuade them at all. To them, an election is only legitimate if they win.
Or a court, right? The court was great while it had a liberal majority. The second it doesn't, they want to reform it. They want term limits. They want to pack it. everything is good until as long as they're in charge. And that's the thing, is democracy's great. I love the chants the other day at the Kamala rally about democracy. And I'm like, you guys just pushed a democratically elected nominee out because you didn't like him. And I mean, I cannot believe, it blows my mind that the media, I mean, I shouldn't say that. It doesn't blow my mind. But the reality is that like we're sitting around with a group of people who are hanging their hat on democracy, and they do anti-democratic thing over and over and over again, and no one bats an eye.
Did you see what they were chanting at the rally? Also, they were chanting, lock him up about Trump, because Kamala is saying we're gonna put that felon, where he belongs. This is a race between a prosecutor and a felon, and he's a felon. We need to lock him up. And I thought, the way that I know for a fact that Donald Trump is not really a felon is that if he were a felon, the Democrats would be chanting to let him out of jail. If he actually were a felon who committed actual real crimes, the Democrats would be begging to abolish the prison system. Okay, they're moving on a dime because the real crime to them is not violating the law; it's crossing them and impeding their political agenda.
I love the fact that like everything that Trump has done is within the confines of the game, if that makes sense, right? Here are the rules of the game. Here's what the Constitution says. Here are the laws of the land. Trump's played within the four corners. Okay, I got this ruling. I'm going to appeal it on these grounds. And what are they? This is anti-democratic. Well, wait a second. He didn't just walk out of the courtroom and said, I will never appear in court and I will fight you and flee the country. That's anti-whatever. He's literally saying, all right, I'm going to file an appeal based on these constitutional grounds. And then he wins. And they go, that's so anti-democratic. No, that's actually the system.
Well, even, after 2016, really after any election that the Democrats lose, they'll come out and they'll say, well, we won the popular vote. And that's why this is illegitimate, that the election was decided by the Electoral College. And you think exactly to your point. Well, no, that's just how elections are conducted. So Trump won the election according to the rules that we all agreed on. By the way, if the election were determined by the popular vote, Republicans probably could win that too. They would just campaign differently. Right. They wouldn't spend as much time in Iowa. They wouldn't spend as much time in smaller states. They would campaign in California and New York, and they probably would win them.
Can you imagine a baseball team, Michael, being like, listen, we got more hits, so we kind of won. And it's like, no, if those don't translate into runs, you don't win the game. Yeah, but we got more hits. It's okay. Well, those aren't the rules of the game. And I
but you don't understand. We bunted a few more times. Hold on, bunting now decides the game. When did that happen?
Right, but also, like, to your point, we don't campaign in California, New York, and Illinois because we're not going to win them. So we're not playing for a random prize that doesn't count. And that's what I find funny. They keep hanging their hat on, but I would have won if. Yeah, well, I would have won too if this thing happened and that thing happened. I mean, you have to play by the rules of the game. Speaking about the rules of the game, though, this is what I wanted to get into when you brought up on X. There was a antitrust lawsuit against the Advertising Industry Coalition and its members, filed by X, formerly known as Twitter, backed by Elon Musk, that went against CVS Health, Mars, Orsted, Unilever, alleging that the group abused its influence over marketers and ad agencies to discriminate unfairly against X, prompting an ad boycott. This is a group called GARM. It was created by members of the World Federation Advertisers in 2019, allegedly to set standards around brand safety, okay? What I know that you guys are involved in this. Can you explain what's at stake in this lawsuit?
Yes, Sean, I hate to brag, and so I would never wish to do so, but I may have actually broken this story about a year ago when people were not really talking about Garm, because the left is really good at hiding the ball, and the left is really good at working behind the scenes through the World Federation of Advertisers, through the World Economic Forum actually is connected to Garm, through other nations. The E-Safety Commissioner of Australia, Julie Inman-Grant, is heavily involved in this effort, and the effort is to create a cartel that will use the weight of advertising, which is why Elon Musk is now filing an antitrust case here, to bully platforms into promoting radical leftist agenda. So it's these left-wing activists in the government and out of the government wielding the economic power of corporations who are under political pressure to pressure the tech platforms, the communication platforms, the public square, into pushing conservative voices out and promoting left-wing messages. And it's really dangerous because, to use the example of the e-safety commissioner in Australia, it means that some bureaucrat in a different country on another continent, on the other side of the world, can dramatically shape the public square in the United States. And, media organizations live on advertising. That's the blood, that's the oxygen of the media organization. So if you find a way to gather all of that together, keep it under your political thumb, and then choke that off from people who step out of line, you will silence the conservatives. And it's no surprise that they're really turning up the volume during an election year. And it's why it's so important that Elon take this action now.
So, but just break this down for a second, because you broke the story, right? So what is happening? This group forms, and then what? How do they hurt conservative organizations, conservative platforms?
So GARM stands for the Global Alliance for Responsible Media. And as you say, this organization exists putatively to defend important safety standards, to prevent children from being harmed, on social media platforms or something like that. But that's not really what it's about. What it's really about is pushing a radical left-wing agenda, including the LGBT agenda, including all of the ideological goodies that the left wants. And so, if a platform such as X decides that it's going to allow conservatives to speak, and it's going to allow conservative news organizations to get our voices out there and to get the facts out there, well, then maybe Garm is going to come in, and maybe they're going to start to choke off some of that advertising revenue. And you've seen...
How?
Well, because Garm has gathered up all of the big corporate advertisers under their wing. And so all of these groups sign on to say, okay, we will adhere to these principles. So it's just like any kind of political alliance. This is an even more difficult political alliance to get your hands around, because it's in part public government. It's the e-safety commissioner of Australia, but it's in part private. It's these private corporations, it's nonprofit organizations, NGOs like the World Economic Forum, but they're targeting the big tech platforms, and they are now representing a lot of advertising revenue.
So the company, so this Garm says, hey, the Daily Wire, X, whatever, they don't adhere to these standards. Don't put your advertising dollars there. Is that right?
And yes, and the corporations have already agreed. Okay, we'll stand by these standards. And in fact, the big tech platforms have agreed to abide by these standards. And wow, what do you know? Just coincidentally, those standards are all radically left wing. So
wow.
it's not even like calling for a boycott. That would be one thing, and we see that all the time. Conservatives do it. Rarely is it effective, but we were effective at least against Anheuser-Busch and Bud Light. But usually the left is a little bit more effective at this. But to build a boycott requires some kind of grassroots movement, requires a little bit of time, a little bit of momentum. But here you've got the boycott already built in. You already have an organization that can turn that money off on a dime, and it's why Elon recognizes this represents an existential risk to his business, X, and from our vantage, it represents an existential risk to an open public square.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.